Hey everyone, this is your host Chris G from Blurred's Eye View. And if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Here, let me explain. First, it's free. You definitely can't beat that. Plus, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast and more. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Blurred's Eye View. I'm your host Chris G. Blurred's Eye View is a podcast that discusses everything in geek pop culture from a POC point of view. And with me is my co-host, the Ghost in the Shadows, Darius DC Chambers. How you doing, Darius?
I'm good. Sans mic, webcam, because I had one on the way and I kind of got bamboozled, but that's a story for another time. Screw PayPal and everybody that uses it.
Oh man, PayPal's so bad.
Yeah.
We have a guest with us today. His name is Jeff Ford. Jeff Ford is is the main podcaster over at the Podcasters Real at World Gone Geek. How's it going, Jeff?
It's good, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm grateful to be here. You were in my inaugural podcast over there, so it's only fair that I return the favor. I'm excited to be here.
Oh yeah. We have a lot of stuff that's happened in the past couple of weeks as far as news is concerned. And I think one of the biggest things that's popped up within the past week is possibly the passing of Denny O'Neil over at DC Comics. He was a big-time writer. He had a lot of influence on Batman during the 70s and 80s. His biggest, probably best known for the Green Lantern and Green Arrow team-up books. What are your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Well, obviously that's sad. Denny O'Neil, yeah, like you said, he was responsible for a lot of the Batman of the 80s, and that's technically when I kind of grew up through Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pay a lot of attention to who was drawing or writing those comics. You know what I mean?
Right.
I went and I dropped my allowance and took them home and devoured them quickly and read them. But that was the Batman really that I other than the 1966, show, I would watch reruns of that.
Right.
That's I'm not that old. That was before my time, but I watched the reruns of that. But the real Batman I learned from the comics when Denny was writing that.
For those who don't know, Denny O'Neil was also responsible. He was actually one of the ones responsible for bringing to light the heroin epidemic at that time when Green Arrow walks in on his sidekick Speedy shooting heroin. It was during his run on Green Arrow and Green Lantern. It opened up a lot of social commentary about, it was like a buddy cop cross-country deal. They were dealing with things that was basically on the street level, because as Green Arrow puts it, he has no abilities. He has skills, he has no abilities. And so he doesn't, the rest of the Justice Leagues who have all these powers and super rings and whatnot, they don't really know what it's like to be down there with the normal people, with the little guy, stopping the bank robbers or stopping the people who doing the real big crimes, that hurting the little guy. So he was very responsible for a lot of that. He was responsible for bringing Batman back to his brooding Batman that we know now and know and love today, which is very weird to say that, but he brought that back as well. Darius, did you have any taste on that?
I did not even know he passed away. There's so many news and so much going on. I did not.
Yeah, it's heavy. It's been a heavy couple of weeks. Yesterday, we lost Sir Ian Helm, who is probably recently best known as Bilbo Baggins. He also played the monk in The Fifth Element, and amongst other things, So he died at 88, I believe it was 88 years old. He passed away. Very known, with the name Sir at the beginning of his name. He's obviously been knighted, by the Queen, and so he had a very extensive acting background, and like I said, he's a fixture in pop culture as well. So, what do you guys think of that one?
Yeah, gosh, Ian he was a legend in so many things. I mean, a lot of people probably are like, well, who's that guy? I mean, you do think of him as Bilbo Baggins, but as soon as you see him, you realize the stuff that he's been in. You've seen him in a bunch of things. What you obviously mentioned, he was the monk in The Fifth Element, and anybody who knows me knows I have this irrational fandom of Bruce Willis movies. So anything with Bruce Willis gets my attention. But yeah, he was hilarious in that as that monk. He's been in a ton of Shakespeare stuff throughout he was in oh gosh, what's the I'm totally
thinking
blank.
the name.
Oh, Time Bandits, which
Yes,
is one of my
yes.
favorite movies
God, I
of
haven't
all
seen that in
time.
years.
He was Napoleon during in those scenes when he was
Yeah.
much younger then, and but yeah, I mean he's been in a lot of things that people just don't necessarily realize. But then when you see those roles, you're like, oh, that guy.
Yeah.
That's Ian Holm.
Yeah. He had a very big, I'm like, Jeff, we're about close to the same age, and so I remember the Time Bandits and watching that and how weird and trippy it was as a kid, and watching it, you're like, man, it had some dark tones into it, but that was that British comedy, that I can get now, so.
Well,
So-
to me, probably his most memorable role, though, was in the very first Ridley Scott's Alien.
Yes.
He was Ash, who was, the android that you weren't sure whether you could trust or not. And
Exactly.
I know it came out in 1979, but I don't know if I should spoil it for anybody. Whether
if you haven't
could.
seen Alien by now, I
Right.
don't know what to tell you.
But that was him in that too. Again, people were, oh wait, that guy. Okay, yeah.
Right. Darius, this is right up your alley. Agents of Shield.
Oh man. So here's
Time travelers. They're reminding me, and it's fun. It is a lot of fun, but it's reminding me very much of DC's Legends of Tomorrow.
yeah, that's right. And I didn't want to say that.
It's not a bad thing because that's also an awesome show. So,
But this is more of a time jump than a universe jump, so I guess it's not parallel. But it has been such a wild ride.
yeah.
Seeing they saved Sousa, and I did not know he was the cop in Avengers. So there's a theory
Yes.
that they're going to drop him off in like that era, that time, because he's supposed to be dead. So now he takes the identity of that cop.
You know what? And that's a theory I did not even think about. He was in Avengers.
He was
when Cap goes around, he starts making the orders to all the cops, and they're like, "Who are you?" And then all of a sudden, the explosions happen, and they do exactly what Cap says after that.
there.
But he's one. I did not realize that. I actually forgot about that when you mentioned it. I started drawing back because he's considered a Whedon-esque type character because he has been in another Joss Whedon show, which was or another Whedon show. Well, it was Joss Whedon show, Dollhouse. He was actually one of the main characters in Dollhouse, and so he's considered one of those characters. You see like Nathan Fillion. It will always be known as Captain Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly, which is another Joss Whedon show. So yeah, seeing that, I will say this: the guys over at that company are doing their work. If they pulled this one off and use that theory, they're amazing.
Yeah.
They're amazing. If they could just he has I can't pronounce his name.
Oh yeah, I'm not even gonna try to butcher.
Yeah, he has
I'm trying to butcher that tonight. But yeah, so that's one theory, and then there was another theory. He was supposed to come back to the MC universe, but he ended up going back to Agents of Shield. Before. So now we're getting the Peggy Carter crossover we were all hoping for. Is just a little too late.
Yeah. As Haley Atwell actually came out the other day and said that she would not be showing up.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just because she's actually doing something else at the time anyway. So
That's what timing's bad.
yeah, unfortunately, we won't get the Peggy Carter we want coming in, but we will get some kind of mention
Yeah,
eventually.
already got it. You know, because
Yeah.
Simmons was masquerading as her. So there was that. So hopefully they tie it in, and it is just the ending that I'm hoping for because I don't want it to end, but I know it's ran its course over this
Yeah.
time. So now it's kind of like, just give me the ending I want. Explain everything, tie it up with a nice neat bow, and let some of the characters move on to something else.
Yeah. Disney Plus just revealed something yesterday actually, and it flew by the radar of just about every fan out there, and it deals with Mark Hamill,
Mhm.
and he has a vocal cameo in The Mandalorian. Did you notice, Jeff?
I saw the headline, but I did not read that story. I
Yeah.
did see that he was supposed to be in it. What did it end up being?
He actually was a droid. He played the voice of a droid in
Oh,
the cantina. He was the
that's funny.
EV-929 droid that was working as a bartender. And
That's
it's so
funny.
funny because it's just like the whole time people were asking Mark Hamill, did he have any part in it? Did he have any? He's like, and he plays coy. Oh, I don't know what they're doing on that show or anything. Further cementing the fact that Mark Hamill is possibly the best voice actor next to Kevin Conroy out there that we have now. And he's pulling it off flawlessly. It was fun to hear that. So, see, now I have to go watch Mandalorian again just to see that scene.
Well, there's always a good excuse to watch that show again.
Can't wait for
I'll
season
take
2.
it.
Yeah. HBO, or speaking of Star Wars Squadron, the new game that's coming out on Xbox, PC, and PS or PlayStation, just revealed their trailer yesterday. And this thing looks fantastic. You'll be able to play as either Empire or Resistance pilots, and it's all from the cockpit. So you're doing a lot of dogfights. There's dogfight modes. There's mission modes. There's complete open gameplay. And I checked this thing out on YouTube, and it looks fantastic. What's your thoughts?
Oh, at first I thought it was just an online game. You know that it was just going to be a multiplayer, which it's okay, but I'm terrible at those piloting games.
Mhm.
And so I would much prefer some sort of a single player storyline. Turns out, I guess it does have that.
Yeah.
It's $40, which is great.
That's
considering
fantastic.
most
Considering
of-
that you see rumors of the PS5 being close to $500 or $600 is crazy.
Right. But I also just read that apparently they're going old school. There's not even any microtransactions. It's literally, this is like EA really reversing course
Yeah.
in that, especially at $40 price point. I'm like, oh yeah, well you're gonna charge me like for every for the 20 add-ons so that I can fly the Millennium Falcon or something like that. But
Yeah, because they have
apparently they're not doing that. So
yeah,
it'll be
they
very
have like
interesting.
and it, I mean, it only makes sense for them to do this version of a game because Battlefronts was such a hit, where everything was on different planets, and so it only, and I've played like the dogfighting games. I remember the Cinemark actually had a holopod where you were sitting in this scene, and it gave you the illusion that you were sitting in the cockpit and flying the Millennium or flying Darth Vader's TIE fighter or any of these ships, and you did these missions, and I got a kick out of that. So now this one, and it's including VR as well, so that should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. I want to see more of that. I can't get enough of the Star Wars universe. We're moving on to something that Jeff really, really loves.
Boy.
Yeah, we used
That's it. It's the trailer for Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Yeah, I'm a little attached to that film. Yeah.
There's some nostalgia there. For those who don't know, Bill and Ted, well, as I said on your show, Jeff, it's the return of the Keanu sense. Now, it's still being released. I think they moved the date up. I do believe it's next month now instead of
so.
August. And I think it's 40 years later. Bill and Ted still have not played the song that's supposed to unite the world.
Mm-hmm.
and the world is going to end in the next 75 minutes, and they have to figure out how to save it. So, thoughts on that?
I mean, if Darius wants to go first.
Yeah.
I know you love it. I can. You're a guest. Guests always are welcome to speak.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the Keanu's because I literally quoted you in our next episode that comes out on Monday because we talk about Bill and Ted. I managed to work it into pretty much every episode somehow, but but I actually quoted you and I gave you credit for it. But we were talking about Keanu Reeves, so I segued into from that. But yeah, to me, like this is great. I've been waiting for this for a long time. The first movie is it pretty much defined my college years. It came out right as I was graduating from high school, so I just gave away my age a little bit there. But that was, I talked like them and acted like them. That's just I mean I hope that I was a little bit smarter than them, but I just love the premise, and I think it's so poignant. I mean, I know that it's just a silly, dude movie or whatever, these guys, but they're actually, I think, telling a really poignant story that I think a lot of us in this world need to hear. A lot of the geeks even of the world might need to hear is that, here back in the 80s and then in the 90s, these guys were supposed to change the world, right? They're supposed to have done something to change the world, and they had been through things that were going to lead them to do that. Right. And here it is 30 years later, and they're fathers, and they've got kids, and the world hasn't changed. And how much are we feeling that right now as a society, right? Like, we knew things were wrong in the world. We knew things were going on, and who's supposed to do something about it? I remember back in the day, Billy Joel had "We Didn't Start the Fire" song, we're trying to light it, or we didn't light it, but we're trying to fight it. Like, that was all, the anthem of that time. And here we are in 2020, and nothing's changed. Nothing, I mean, there's some things that have improved, but for the most part, we're still struggling with a lot of the same problems that we had. Yeah. And so I almost feel like this movie, I mean, it's probably going to be really goofy and silly and not as poignant as I'm making it out to be, but I love the premise because I feel like we're all kind of a little bit of Bill and Ted right now. We're all looking around going, wait a minute, we were supposed to change the world, and we kind of didn't do it. What did we do? And so obviously they're going to have a time machine. We don't have that opportunity as a society, but we can still make some change. And I hope that's the lesson that comes from the movie. I have no idea what to see it, but we actually speculated, and you guys will like this. I don't know if you heard our last episode, but we speculated that when we see Bill and Ted in their future, and they're all buff in prison.
Right. You're right.
We're wondering if that's just one possible Bill and Ted future, like if there's going to be a multiverse type of situation, and we're going to see lots of Bill and Teds. And then I think you and I, we all joked about a John Wick version being out there, a John Wick Ted. Yeah. Like if he went to military school, he becomes John Wick. And so I'd like to think that at the end of this movie, when they're trying to, they're up against whatever villainous thing is against them, that there's this almost like this end game kind of moment where all these Bills and Teds from all these different time periods, you just kind of come up behind them, and they're all standing, and then they play the song that changes the. I don't know. That's actually what I'm
that would
for.
Be fantastic if they did something like that. I would. Oh my God, I would love that. Darius, what do you think?
I peed a little just talking about it.
I don't know what I can say after that. I mean, that was masterful. But I took that it was like Bill and Ted was supposed to save the world, went out, had adventures, got a family, got lazy, and forgot.
Yeah,
we're supposed to save the world. So here it is, 30 years later, and it's like, okay, you guys had all this time, you didn't do what you're supposed to do. Here comes the end of the world. So now you got the ultimate procrastinators with 75 minutes to save the world. What can they do?
Yeah.
So I'm looking into it.
This is one of those moments where you would just have to call Doctor Who. He or she always seems to solve that problem within an hour, hour and a half maybe. HBO Max. premiered the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League this week. The Snyder cut of Justice League should be appearing next year, possibly. And I know they gave Zack Snyder about 20 million, maybe 30 million, not for reshoots as it's turning out, but I think to just kind of clean up whatever audio they have or whatever video they have, and to kind of reattach some of the scenes that they did cut out. Now, from what I've heard over time since the movie's release, original movie release, there was mention of more of a Green Lantern scene. There was mention of the general who has shown up in Man of Steel, and I believe he's shown up. I think he was in Justice League for a quick shot, and more of a Commissioner Gordon scene, which I was really kind of upset about that they didn't show more of Gordon. But that premiered this week, and you get a glimpse of Darkseid finally. So there he is. Shoot the gift.
We have this conversation every time.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say the same thing I said last time. I wish I know, he had to leave because of family issues, but I really wanted to see this originally. Now you're giving it to me as a kind of consolation prize for it being so off,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to it. I will say that because I did see the picture of Darkseid and I want to see more. They have my attention.
Right.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm ready to see it because there was so much, like we said, there was so much that we felt was left on the cutting room floor that just didn't make it or, didn't see it because I'm not going to say egos, but, somebody else came in and had their own idea and vision and they went with that. Right. So I'm looking forward to it. And I just can't wait.
Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm excited that that's coming out. I wasn't a huge fan of the original. That's I guess an understatement. I did enjoy it more than Batman versus Superman. But
we don't talk about that on this.
Yeah. I did feel it was somewhat of an improvement, but it was still just such a mess. And to be honest, like and as much as I love Zack Snyder, it's just I've never felt like he was the right guy for this. Mm-hmm. But I do, as another creative who likes, who does video production and stuff, I love the idea that this guy's getting a chance to at least finish his vision. I mean, I can respect that, and so we'll see if it's as good or better than what we got. The problem is the stuff that ended up on the screen the first time around still had so many problems. Unless you completely wipe that out, how can you suddenly improve it? That's the only thing that concerns me. But I'm great. I think it's a neat idea. I wonder how, it's obviously opening up a can of worms because now all you see all over Twitter and everywhere is released the insert director cut here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so every time somebody makes a bad movie, they're going to be like, but I had a great movie. It was the studios who ruined it. And so I hope this doesn't become a trend with every movie that turns out badly. But this one, I feel like definitely he deserves another shot. He it wasn't like he left on some sort of, terrible terms, like he was just difficult director or was just, you know what I mean? It was a family tragedy. And I totally respect that. He wants a second shot, and it's interesting that Warner Brothers has given it to him. It's definitely a new thing. That's not something that we've seen happen before.
Right.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah. When you mentioned like this directors, it's this new wave now. You have the Ayer version of Suicide Squad. You have I think it was another Fantastic Four, Trank's Fantastic Four. Which I don't. Yeah. You took it right from me. I'm like, I don't, and that's on Disney Plus now, and I'm just like, why? Of all the, is there something more that we need to see? And like,
I honestly would rather see a third with with Chris Evans's back. I'd rather see a third of those Fantastic Four movies than a remake of the Trank one.
Yeah. Oh God, the Trank ones were so bad. Once again, something that happens when, and Jeff, I think I've mentioned it to you before. There's one thing you never do as a fan, there's one thing you notice and wish you could tell the studios: you never change your director in the middle of your film
Mm.
because it loses the direction, it loses its steam, and you just lose all sight of everything, and then you have someone else's vision. It's not like Star Wars where, and don't get me wrong, I'll take the good and the bad with Star Wars. And I'm probably one of the few who like the last three trilogies. I'm okay with that. But here you had a situation where, and I'll use Star Wars for example. Here you had a director on one, and then you went with another director on the second one, and then on the third one you went back to the first director. So it lost some translation. Some characters did not get gelled out as they should have. Like you give them the teasers, like Finn being force sensitive, you know, which I would have loved to see another film. Let's get Finn the story he deserves, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, that type of stuff, you know. So I'm looking forward to seeing Zack Snyder has some visually fantastic looking films. He really does. Let him finish his vision. You know, let's see what it comes out from there. We can judge it for after that, and we'll be fine. He's finished with it. We've seen what we need to see, and let's move on. You know,
Mm.
speaking of the DC universe, they've pushed back Wonder Woman 84 to October now. It was originally supposed to be August. It's now October. Uh, Theaters have officially gotten the go ahead to reopen, but they're not comfortable reopening just yet. I think due to the social distancing, and they want to make sure they get all the bugs worked out, so to speak. And I can understand that. So I'm not in a rush to run back, but I do want to see a movie theater. That was kind of like my go to thing on the weekend. But we can wait and be safe, knowing that I guess and this is the same thing Disney did. Disney did a complete shift for their shift for their whole slate of movies. We were already supposed to be done with Black Widow and watching the Eternals this year in November, but everything got shifted. And it's for the better. It's for the better. So we'll get the Eternals at the beginning of next year. Everything gets pushed back a couple months. I think one of those years we actually get 5 Marvel films in one year, which is insane. So I'm like, well, you're taking the entire summer, and probably the fall. So, and speaking of Marvel, they are currently for Disney Plus. They are currently looking for perhaps a Native American or indigenous person, maybe a Latinx, to play a deaf superhero. And the theory is that the person is Echo. Now, for those who don't know, Echo was a superhero in Daredevil, who, although she couldn't hear, she was like Daredevil. Daredevil can't see and can fight. She can mimic everything she sees, which makes her a fantastic fighter. And she's also taken on the role as Ronin, which was currently just held by Hawkeye in the Avengers film and in the books as well. This should be interesting because they're now. My first theory was, well, if they're introducing Echo, are they going to finally introduce Daredevil? Because I know that the deal that they have with Netflix will, if not, if it hasn't expired already, it will be very soon.
Mm-hmm.
So that stands the question: will it be an introduction to Daredevil, or since she's worked with Daredevil and she's also worked with Moon Knight, there's talk of a Moon Knight series being done on Disney Plus. Will she appear in Moon Knight? Darius, what you
Oh,
think?
well, not. I mean, you know how I feel about the Netflix stuff. I wish they never would have ended that. Contracts be damned. But um, if they can, because they have so many characters like that hasn't been introduced or people forgotten or don't know. It's just they have the potential to. Their catalog is extensive, and there's still so much money out here that they are not snatching up yet. So I think Moon Knight would be a good one. I still want to see Black Widow. We know how I feel about Luke Cage
Right.
and Iron Fist. So it has potential if they can find the right person and let them have time to train. So they're not doing a Danny Rand on the first season where it's just
We
garbage. Yeah, yeah.
we speak not of such
Oh,
things.
sorry. It's been a while. I forget the rules that we have. It's so many. We spoiler alerts because if you haven't heard it by now or seen it by now, it's just too bad.
Or you're not missing much one. So
Neither. No.
Jeff?
No, I think that's great. I would love to. I, for one, would love to see the Netflix series come back in some way, shape, or form. I was kind of hoping they would make an appearance on Hulu, which Disney owns too, and they
Right.
can get away with a little more darker, subject matter. But especially with Runaways being over there on Hulu and stuff, that felt like it would fit right in. But I would love to see Echo come back and bring Daredevil back as well. That would be kind of amazing. And I'm
Especially
with.
since
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, especially since Charlie Cox was actually fantastic as
He
Matt
was
Murdock.
so good. Well, all of those shows were great. Like I
Yeah.
can't think. I mean, the first season of Iron Fist was a little rough. But I felt like it started to kind of catch its stride in the second season,
Mhm.
and I loved the way that second season ended. And then they're like, nope, that's it. And I'm like, what? No, it actually finally got good. Like, what is now? You're going to pull it away, and that cliffhanger that Luke Cage ended on, and Luke Cage was a great series as well, but to end on that cliffhanger and then not follow through and not be able to see what's going to happen,
That was such a slap in the face.
and as much as I loved Jessica Jones, it didn't need more to me. Like I felt like it was time for her to move in and be a part of a group with the other team. In fact, I couldn't figure out how they were going to top that first season with David Tennant as the Purple Man.
That was fantastic.
Oh my gosh, I was like, there's no way they can top it. And you know what? They didn't. Like the second season was good, but it was nowhere near the quality of that first season. And
they just made a slight tease to him possibly still being around.
So and then it's all gone. Yeah, that was that was hard to watch. So yeah, any little tease or any little bit. Plus, it's a great idea. I'd love to see Echo brings a lot more diversity to the shows that are going in there, including the having a deaf character is huge. I would hope that they would also get someone who is actually deaf would be kind of cool as well to play that role. But then that's a great character that would be fun to see on screen.
Right. It's funny when you mention Luke Cage, and my goodness, between that and, like you said, David Tennant on Jessica Jones, like, who doesn't like this guy? Number one, he's a fantastic actor. Number one, and seeing him as Doctor Who, and like being like almost like a fan favorite for a certain generation, and then to see him play the most creepiest role, and you're
hard.
just like, it was very hard. You're just like, but he was doing it so well, and it was so creepy. But watching, I would have liked to see Jessica be folded into one of the other shows, and I was really looking forward to Daughters of the Dragon, which was Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, and I was really looking forward to that.
I thought looked like that's where they were headed. It's almost like they recognized that Iron Fist is kind of a fun character, but the everybody around him has always really been more interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, let's use Iron Fist to build these other characters, and then he can still be in it.
Yeah, right.
But it,
we'll teeter off with the ladies here.
They did a great job with Colleen and with Misty.
They
and
really
those
did.
actresses were great, and so I would love to have seen more of that.
They really did. And then, like you said, leaving that in. Me and Darius has talked about this in great length, how the cliffhanger for Luke Cage was just that, it just left you hanging, and you're just like, oh, he's going to do this from the inside now, and people were coming up with theories on how the next season was going to turn out, and next, they started canceling Iron Fist, and I'm like, okay, well, we expected that. And then they said, we're not doing another Defenders neither. And we're like, we expected that too. But then they said, but we're canceling Luke. We're going to cancel Luke Cage. And we're like, what? And And then they're like, oh, the numbers didn't do that great. I'm like, the first season, you guys crashed the internet literally and made the servers go down. And when they said they were canceling that, and then Punisher's second season, that was going to be last season, they were like, well, you might as well cancel Daredevil too. And that's just what they did, you know, so.
And you just knew it was all because of Disney Plus, and that they didn't want to have to compete, you know, with themselves basically on another. So they didn't cooperate.
Yeah.
But I'm like, so okay, so now announce how they're coming back.
Exactly.
Like, let's hear it.
I'm sure this is what you want. This is what the fans want. You
crazy.
know, they're clamoring for it. Well, with it being Father's Day weekend, and happy Father's Day to you guys.
You too.
Thank you. I decided to make this show the best and the worst of fathers in pop culture. And I'll go ahead and read off a name. We'll rip from there. I have 5 of the best. I have about 4, maybe 5 of the worst. You know, I had to think about the worst shows that had the worst fathers. And so I had to kind of top it at the top. So we'll start with the best. And at the top of this list is a gentleman who actually took a child in and claimed him as his own.
Are these in a particular order, or is this just 5? Like, is this number 1 or number 5, or is it?
I'll just say like 5, but I'm just using like the top one I like.
I got you.
You know, yeah. So, and he took a child in that he raised as his own, gave him a lot of insight, and it made him the person that he is today, and that's Jonathan Kent, the father of, adoptive father of Clark Kent, otherwise known as Kal-El, otherwise known as Superman. Thoughts?
That would work for me. I mean, he went too soon, but he did keep Cal kind of grounded and gave him his humanity, which in turn turned him into I wouldn't say the greatest superhero, but everybody knows my affinity for Superman, right up there with Deadpool. So it made him a better superhero. He didn't fly off the handle too much. He was even keeled, mild mannered. You know, it gave him his human side. It made him feel like he wasn't an outsider.
Right. Jeff?
No, I like that choice. That's great. And I guess it depends on which incarnation of him that you want to go with, from the comics or the more recent movies, the old movies, Smallville. But yeah, pretty much in all of them, that he's that kind of that constant. Both his mother and his father were, especially when you compare him to his actual father, Jor-El, who, again, depending on the incarnation, is either a very kind of like ethereal good guy, or was a terrible guy who kind of depending on which incarnation. But at the very least, what I've always liked about Superman is that he has all these powers because he comes from this other this otherworldly planet, and is definitely an alien among us. But the way he was raised, you know what I mean, is determined the fact that he's super, right? Because he could have been, if he had come into different circumstances, who knows what he might have been like. With great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
But he could have. What if he landed and somebody who took advantage of him and used him, figured out he had these powers, and then used him to do bad things, and he became a bad guy? Like there's all these things. So there's a lot to be said for having a great father in your life, and Jonathan Kent was definitely one of those for Kal-El.
Yeah. I agree. He, like you said, in any incarnation that they had, he always had words of wisdom. Even in the current incarnation, which was the films, no matter how you felt about it, Kevin Costner still embodied some form of Jonathan Kent. He still gave him words of wisdom, and it's still heartbreaking to watch him sacrifice.
Well, Clark could have still saved him. Okay, but we're going to go.
Could have. He really could have.
I still think that's ridiculous. Like, there's no way he could have literally just ran it. You know, I mean, this is this is
a tornado. Nobody's paying attention to the kid.
Like, come on, yeah, it was.
But it stands a testament that he felt he put his child before anything else, so to speak. And he said that it was only then that he needed to not expose himself to the world. Not yet.
Right.
No.
But we know how fast he is.
Oh, yeah.
And he could have grabbed him and took him. People would just seen the Blur from Smallville, right? They wouldn't have seen necessarily know. It's the whole, there's enough room on the door in Titanic situation for me. You know what I mean? Like that definitely, there definitely did not have to end that way. That was my one complaint about that movie. Actually, I liked
there was room. There was room. You could have let Jack on. There was room.
But I think he could have saved Jonathan. He should have, but it is what it is.
No. Yeah. So you mentioned something that actually will segue perfectly into my next entry on the list, which is Uncle Benjamin Parker. Someone else who has taken in a child not his own and raised him as his son. Now, I had this discussion with my wife the other day as to why did they have to make Uncle Ben and Aunt May so old. But because it actually makes sense that his parents, either his mother, I think it was his mother's sister, that their parents had Aunt May early on in life, and then the sister came much, much later.
She was an oops.
Yeah, she was an oops.
Peter Parker's mom was an oops baby.
Right, she was an oops baby. But Uncle Ben, once again, he instilled qualities that stuck with Peter even now. It's almost guilt trippy a little bit when he mentions it. He always remembers his uncle in even the most dire of times, and he just, it's his driving force that he keeps looking back. He says, had I stopped at Robert then, he'd still be here. And now I can't sit back idly and watch something else happen if I know I can stop it now. So, Jeff, you take it from that one?
Sure. Yeah. No, I love that choice, to be honest. And actually, it's one of my biggest complaints. Like, I love the MCU, the new Marvel movies and everything, and I love the reintroduction of Spider-Man that they did. I think Tom Holland is great. I love the interaction between him and Tony Stark. But it's but even though I love those things, that's also one of the things that I don't like about these new movies is that Stark has kind of replaced Uncle Ben in that story. And I don't like that they've done that. And that because I always loved how Uncle Ben was just what you said, right? He's kind of like, even though he's out of the picture now, you know what I mean? But it's like his memory is the reason that Peter makes good choices, right? It's because of what he learned from Uncle Ben. And the fact that they've kind of, they barely even mention him in these new ones. And Tony Stark is kind of his conscience now. And I get it, it's a new thing. It's its own thing now and, whatever. But I personally have always been a little bothered by the fact that it feels like the MCU is just like threw Uncle Ben under the bus and let Stark take over because of the influence that you just mentioned. Like, we don't have that in the new ones. They're still good. I still love them. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm not throwing the MCU under the bus. I'm just saying that was really my only nitpick, is that Uncle Ben was important to Peter's life, and it feels like it's not.
Right. Darius?
Uncle Ben was a beyond the grave moral compass. He was his guidance. He was his true north. He always kept, no matter what happened, he could go back to that man career, Uncle Ben. Even when he was dying and hold him in his arms, he was still that kind of, do right, Peter. Stay the course.
Right.
Then Tony Stark comes along, and now he's this cool Corvette, and he's just like, go wild, get loose, and go.
Go wild and get loose. All right. That's an uncle thing that would say that. And they're like,
that's the young
that's the young hip uncle. Get wild, kid. Stay loose. Yeah.
But here's my other question, and I know this is kind of off topic, but how come in every movie Aunt May and Uncle Ben get younger?
Yeah, right?
and Peter's gonna be like 9 and becoming Superman. Like I just don't.
Well, it's because the producers have the same argument that Chris and his wife had. They keep
Yeah,
like, wait a minute, why are they so much older than Peter Parker's parents? Like, it
yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
So out of the comics field, we're gonna go into it's still pop culture related, but another uncle who seems to fit that bill, Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Once again, even though he's not Will Smith's father, he took the role on and took in a child that is not even of his blood, it's of his wife's blood,
yeah.
and raised him as if it was his own. He steered him in the right direction, despite the pratfalls and the pitfalls they've gone through. Despite how much he made the fat jokes against him and everything else, he still viewed him as one of his children. And there's still some very poignant moments that even are gut-wrenching, such as the episode where Will's father, who's played by Ben Vereen, actually shows up and leaves him again. And that scene, and I've seen the articles and I've seen the interviews for that scene, and they say even in that scene, it wasn't scripted. It wasn't scripted at all. And and so when he grabs Will and he hugs him, he's just like, man, that brought something real out of him.
Well,
It was a real thing for him.
yeah, he pulled from his own real life experience of his dad, leaving him and not being around. So that scene wasn't just, it was cathartic. That scene wasn't just for the show. That was Will getting that real, I've done all these great things and my dad was never there.
Mm.
That, why didn't he want me line wasn't in the script. That was kind
Exactly. Yeah. And that was a tearjerker, if anything.
I cannot watch that scene without feeling like there's dust in the air. That
Right.
kind of is touching, but at the same time, it's so real.
Guttural. Yeah, it's guttural.
Feel the tension, the hurt, the despair. You can feel all this in this one scene, and then with one hug, it's kind of like gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the air is clear, food tastes a little better. It's just like
He was like, I'm here. No matter what, I'm here. I'm here. I took you.
or in real life and in this show, I'm like your father. Like I'm here for you. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you, and I just felt that. Like that scene was real.
Right. Jeff?
Yeah, that was powerful. That was just, I mean, what a great show. But that episode, it still, means a lot to me as well. I felt like, watching that there was something more going on than just the script at that point. Although
Yeah.
I will say this, and I do think that he's a great father throughout that series, right? He does a great job. But I want to know where we went wrong with Hillary, because how does she turn into such a selfish?
I think that
There's always one.
And she was the oldest, so they were just like, what happened to you?
She was
And how
so
do we get it right
selfish
with the
and
other ones?
self-centered and full of herself. And then you've, I mean, Carlton was a little bit full of himself too, obviously, when they first met. But he started to get it together at least.
Oh yeah,
But she was so selfish all the time.
all the time, like through the whole thing.
I'd never seen someone so ditzy in my life.
Yeah,
Even when what was her fiance or future fiance was going to be, what was his name?
Stedman.
No, not Stedman. It was something. But he was a television reporter, and he
Yeah.
bungee jumps and he's getting ready to ask her to marry him, and his cord broke or something, and it never gets it out. And I'm like, I've never seen something so brutal yet so funny at the same time, because she was just like, yes, like
Just
talking to the television, and everybody's looking at her like, you do realize just what happened.
Oh my
I
gosh.
remember that like it was yesterday. Cause it's like, Hillary, will you? She's like, yes. What? Wait. What do you mean, Trevor? That's what's next.
Says Trevor, right. Oh my gosh, poor Hillary. If anybody stayed the same throughout the entire run of that series, it was Hillary.
Well, a little bit towards the end, she did kind of the last. 3 episodes, maybe. She did change for the better a little bit. She was less self-centered, if that's an idea you want to go with.
Right.
She was a little smarter. I don't know how, but she was doing it on her own. But
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. She still had that edge to her, but yeah, that's true.
I just think Uncle Phil must have spoiled her when she was younger, and he was a
Yeah.
lot. He
He
was
was
a
his
lot.
first daughter. He was the
Yeah.
oldest child,
And then he learned from that and became he was better with the rest of them.
right. So here we have another father that's in the TV world that many don't give him much recognition for. Carl Winslow from Family Matters.
Carl was
The stuff he dealt with. Once again, this is one of those situations where
that he
oldest
didn't strangle Urkel at some point.
He came so close.
The self restraint that was required to do that.
Yeah, he came so close on so many occasions. But this is one of those situations. Once again, like we mentioned with Uncle Phil, where Carl Winslow's oldest son, Eddie, wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed at some point. But Laura was the smart as a whip one, and then Judy was the smart mouth one. So he had to wonder. Judy got the smart mouth from the grandmother, and Laura probably got her wisdom from her parents, and we don't know what happened with Eddie.
Well, yeah, but like Uncle Phil, we ain't gonna say he wasn't the greatest dad ever because he sent Judy to her room and she never came back. Let's get that out there first.
Yeah. Go to your room, Judy. And then, for the rest of that run, you never seen Judy ever again.
Dude gets into her room forever. Like, what do you have to do to get banished to your room for eternity?
Right. Oh my goodness, poor Judy. We know what happened, but this is a semi-friendly, kid-friendly show, so we're not going to say what exactly happened to Judy. But there were some moments in that show that stood out for Carl being like this great father. One scene that they've been playing a lot lately is when Eddie was a car guy. He loved working on cars, and he had a muscle car. He literally throughout several seasons was building this car from the ground up. And I think it was in its final few seasons where he was out driving and he gets profiled.
Yep.
And he's the son of a cop, and Carl is what you would consider one of the good cops, because he went and confronted that cop who profiled him and reported him, and he basically showed his hand on him, and like, hey, this, that, and the other, and he dealt with Urkel with such
grace, sensibility.
My goodness. And no matter what, Steve respected him and still came back, and but he loved Stefan. I'm like, but it's the same guy. It was like, so I don't know. It's Carl Winslow gets the Medal of the Year award for patience alone. Not just being a great father, but just for patience alone. He's like, Steve, like, your parents left you with me. Why? And they moved where?
Alaska.
Like Alaska, or to the Antarctic or something. I'm like, they abandoned you, man. That was so bad.
Yeah. So can we put his parents put his dad on the bad list, because he abandoned a whole child. Like, we never seen one episode. That's how bad of a dad he was.
Yeah, Urkel's real father. Yeah, he's on we put him on the honorable mention pile there. So, what do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I actually didn't watch that show a ton. I was not a huge fan of Urkel at the time, but I did like. For me, I did start watching it though, because for me it was always a sequel to Die Hard. And
Yes,
so, as
yes.
far as I was concerned, Al Powell just changed his name to Carl and moved it. It was undercover. Something happened after Nakatomi Plaza that he had to change his name and
He's
go
always playing the
undercover,
cop.
and and raise this family. And that his wife was the one that needed all the Twinkies. Yeah, that's my little
Yeah,
head canon of
yeah.
how that show
That it
works.
actually works that way. I always said that, like, man, Carl just loves playing the cop. I'm like, maybe he's a cop, you know.
Yep.
So, but
But he was super. The patience that the episodes that I remember was that he had to show an immense amount of patience because of Urkel.
oh my goodness, poor Carl. Once again, we have another entry on the list who has taken a child that he was already caring for, but now he was left caring for him due to the parents passing away. That's Alfred Pennyworth from
Mm.
Batman. Despite being Bruce Wayne's servant throughout his entire life, he always viewed Bruce as his boy, as his child. And Bruce, even though he knew his father, still viewed Alfred in that that paternal light. You know, when the chips was down, he can count on Alfred. Alfred was patching him up. He was giving him words of wisdom. He was giving him words like, maybe you should not go out tonight, sir. Maybe you should just sit down. And if you're watching Harley Quinn, there's moments where he's literally treating him like a child. He's like, no, sir, you should not go out right now. You are not yet healed. And there's moments where he's going through it. But Alfred Pennyworth literally cared for Bruce from birth.
Mm.
That was his job. And he did it very well. And he continued, well, I can't say continue, maybe in some iteration, but if you haven't read a book lately, spoiler alert, Alfred's not around anymore.
Mm.
Bane got a hold of him. Let's put it that way.
Oh,
But yeah. But Alfred Pennyworth gets that father moniker as well. So what do you think, Jeff?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's funny how many of these guys were more father figures than actual fathers in some of this situation. Like Uncle Ben was not a father; he didn't have kids of his own, but Peter was. He took him on and became his father. Alfred is a great example, and I think a lot of the incarnations that we've seen in the movies, they touch on that a lot. Like they give him a lot of those types of speeches. I think Michael Caine did
Right.
that. There's some really good moments between him and Bruce in those Nolan movies. Depending on the only incarnation I think that didn't take that was the 1966 one.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
that Alfred was more of comic relief. Like
Yeah.
I love it whenever Bruce Wayne and Batman had to appear in the same place, and Alfred would wear the costume. Do you remember that? I think there was an episode
Oh, yeah,
where
yeah.
he and I'm like, come on, like, but that was hilarious, right? But he was more of kind of like an actual butler, and he kept Batman's secret, but there was never that relationship in that show. But all the movies, all the comics, I love how and then the show Gotham, I thought that has done a great job with that, even though it's done other things very strangely. I
Yeah.
love the way they have molded the Bruce and Alfred relationship in that.
Yeah, he really treats him like his kid. He
Yeah.
really does.
Yeah,
He's very protective of him.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and he's had to. I mean, Bruce was young even when his parents died, so he's been a father, and I really the whole butler thing is just for appearances, but it's deeper than that for the both
Oh
of
yeah.
them.
Oh yeah. Darius?
Alfred should get Father of the Year for having to deal with, Bruce and all his bat-related issues. But no, I mean Alfred was again that kind of a moral compass, but this one was a little deeper because Alfred didn't really guide him as far as the Batman thing, but as far as Bruce and guiding him and helping him keep some kind of humanity, because it was time for Batman got lost in being Batman.
Right.
Bruce was kind of blurring that line between being a criminal and being a vigilante and being a superhero. Well, not really a superhero because he was just a man in a giant dresses like a bat. But it's just there was that line that he sometimes almost crossed, and Alfred was there to pull him back and kind of keep him from crossing that line.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, he deserves to be Father of the Year. Talk about patience.
Yeah, he's one of the one, like you said, he didn't encourage him to wear the suit, but he advised him, like, well, if you're going to do it, at least do it this way,
And if that's not a father thing too, right? I mean,
yeah.
I don't know how old your guys' kids are, but I don't know how many times I've said stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like, if you're going to do it,
please do
just
it right.
do it this way. Right. So now we move on to the worst list. So I don't know how much worse we can get. These guys, I don't think there's a top spot really. They kind of like are really all bad.
I have one, but I'm gonna let you do yours.
So I'll start with Darkseid.
Oh yeah.
Darkseid, whose children include Calabac, Orion, and is adopted. Well, his nephew, which he took as a trade from his brother, the Highfather, Scott Free, aka Mr. Miracle. Darkseid shows no emotion for his children, obviously, and with the exception of Mr. Miracle, none of in Orion, they show no emotion towards him. They actually hate him, except for Calabac and it's one other child he has. I can't remember the name, but Calabac is like his warrior. It's like his first child. He's just like, go out and fight, whatever. Don't disappoint me, And Orion, he's like, even though that is his son, he traded him to his brother. They traded kids as a peace agreement of all things. I don't know how Cain and Abel would have done this, but they traded each other's kids as a peace agreement. And his kid became like one of the top heroes over in Allfather's planet. And Scott Free became, well, an escape artist, so to speak. And yeah, Darkseid's not really the person you want to call father at this point, There is.
So in other words, he's somebody you don't want watching your kids.
Exactly.
No,
which is why I'm trying to figure out how the trade-off with their kids even started, but
to keep the peace. I know Superman the animated series touched on that really well.
Mm-hmm.
There's an episode on that, but yeah, Darkseid, I don't know. Maybe it's because he's sort of like a Thanos type character. It's just all about the power and the conquest for him, and pawns are just pawns, and nobody else matters but him and his conquest of getting what he wants. I think that's the only reason he's like that. I mean, I'm pretty sure when they're at home on Apocalypse and he's feeding the dog and has a cup of coffee in his hand, that's the part we don't see. It's always about fighting and anger. We don't know how these guys are when they're at home in their bathrobe and he got slippers on and he's flipping burgers on a fire pit. We don't know this. So I think we're basing this is baseless. We're basing this off the wrong information. Darkseid could actually be like, taking the kids to soccer practice when they were younger and but
oh my gosh.
Father, let's just say that. He's a horrible father.
Yeah.
The
Jeff,
thing he did.
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
But that's
yeah, go ahead. You said he was a horrible father?
Yes.
Yeah.
The absolute worst.
I don't even think he deserves. I don't even think father is a good word. They say it like as when Calabac actually says it, he says it as he's begging, Father, please. No.
He's more of a
thumbs down. Jeff?
Actually, I got to defer to both of you because I'm not familiar with Darkseid's history. I mean, I've seen, and I know that he fights Superman. DC, Batman was always my main reason for reading DC. A little bit of Superman here and there, but I'm not familiar with all of his. I was really a Marvel guy growing up, other than Batman. Batman, I own tons of those comics, but that was He was my only DC hero back in the day.
Yep. We'll move on to the next father on the list, and these two, well, is two entries, and they're from the same place. The first one is Robert Baratheon from Game of Thrones. And
He's pretty bad.
yeah, and the second is Tywin Lannister
Yeah.
from Game of Thrones. So
There are very few
the
good
balance
dads in
there,
that.
yeah, very few.
If there's a good dad in that show, he died in the first season.
Poor Ned Stark. Robert Baratheon, how do you describe him? He's more of a drunken warrior who's lost his edge, so to speak, and he's done nothing but had kids by several different people, and so his kids are all over the place. He has a bunch of bastard kids. Even the kid he thinks is his, he realizes is not his kid. He figured it out. Like, I don't have blonde hair. Like, so you want to say you had to chime in on that one, Jeff?
Well, yeah. So that show is so full of bad fathers. I mean, seriously, like almost every father is just a terrible, terrible person, which is why everyone else is terrible people, because they have terrible, terrible fathers. Why are the Starks the only nice people? They have the only nice father of all the ones that. I mean, it's true. Like even Daenerys's father was terrible. That's why her brother was terrible. That's why ultimately she was terrible as well.
Right.
Eventually, just if there's ever been a show that I guess. Is the epitome of what happens when you don't have good fathers, and,
Right.
and it's that show. Like I honestly can't think of anybody that had a good father in that show.
Beyond anything beyond.
I mean, Theon's
Ned
dad
Stark.
was terrible.
Yes.
Who else? Gosh, they're all bad. I really
Yeah.
can't think of a good dad other than Ned. That's
it.
crazy. Now that you think of it, what's the other guy's name? The one that was really bad. That towards the end there. Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking.
It was Tywin and
Yeah, well-
Tyrion took care of that one. So I mean,
The guy who ends up killing one of the other Starks with the arrow in the middle of the field. With the dogs.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about.
Exactly.
His dad was terrible. Like
Yeah.
I was just literally like
And
every single.
I could not stand.
He's
that
the
guy.
worst, right? But his dad was terrible too, so that's why. I mean, it's just they're all bad.
All right, Darius.
I unfortunately did not get into Game of Thrones, but from what I heard, everybody on that show sucked who was a father.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Starks were the only shining moment, in everybody cheered for the Starks.
Be on there.
Oh yeah. Now these next two entries, they're not really bad fathers. Let's put it like this: they're not bad fathers like Tywin and Robert Baratheon or Darkseid. And I didn't even mention Thanos, but
Oh,
but these two, they're bad in the sense of bad decision making.
Hmm.
So the first one is Al Bundy.
Ooh.
Despite everything this man has done, he does love his family. They just get on his nerves. And I think every father can speak to that. You know, their kids just drive them up the wall. He could have done the watch the Dodge a lot more often. You know, I don't see how he stayed in a house in the suburbs of Chicago on a shoe salesman's salary, but he did. So he made it work. You know, wife gets on his nerves. He'll read a nudie magazine. He has no problem going to the bathroom anywhere, for that matter. He had great rapport with Marcy Darcy, though. So
That.
what you got to say for that one, Darius?
I don't think Al should be on this list. I think
He really shouldn't.
because
It's just bad decision making.
he lived in the suburbs on a shoeman's salary. if that's not a good father making it work when your oldest daughter is loose and your is an idiot. I mean, like he had, and his dog could talk, but nobody can hear it. He was before it mattered.
He had the Shaggy. Experience. That's what he had.
And the man also scored 4 touchdowns in one. That is a
city championship game.
Hi, baby.
Yeah.
Polkai
Polkai.
Panthers.
He also started No Ma'am
No, ma'am. There you go. Went to DC with it too.
at the nudie bar. Al Bundy was a hero. He's getting everybody solid right next.
Trust me, I struggled with that list. I'm like, I don't think he belongs there. It's just he has a bad run of decision making. That's all.
Has the decisions, but when in Rome, I mean, do as Al Bundy.
But when it was time to fisticuffs, he was the man. and his kids was backing him up, and his wife backed him up. And they took care of business. Jeff.
I mean, his kids were terrible, and I'm sorry that it starts with the father. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love that show. It was one of the few shows my when it came out, my dad loved that show too. We would watch that together. It was one of the few shows that we both enjoyed. You know how like ridiculous that family was, but no, as a father, no, he was not a very good father. I mean, but then, he wasn't a very good husband. She wasn't a very good wife. They weren't very good kids. I mean, they were all, kind of like, not great people, but that's what made it so fun. You know what I mean?
Buck the dog was the only one who was kind of like the point of view of the audience is just like,
yeah. It's like, are there really people like this? Yeah, there are. And, but like everybody on that show was like that. Like even Marcy and like they, and Steve, and then later what was
Jefferson.
Yeah. Even those guys all like they're just terrible people too. Like they're all just terrible people. But that's kind of what makes it fun. I mean, Seinfeld, right? They're all terrible people, but they have their good things too. That but no, I don't know if he's the worst dad in pop culture, but yeah, he's not a great dad.
Yeah, right. So that leads off to the final on this list, because I forgot my 2 honorable mentions on the good list, and I'll bring them up in a second. Peter Griffin.
He's the worst.
Oh, hey.
Now
he's the worst.
Now let me tell you why. Peter Griffin, he tears down his own kid's self-esteem. He just does. Okay. I can't tell you how many times he said how ugly Meg looks. Mm-hmm. I can't say it any further than that.
And they all do it because they take cues from him. So
exactly.
Meg got it the worst, but
yeah.
And once again, I think it's a thing where I don't know if it's a thing where bad decision making fathers have conversation with their dogs. Because
oh yeah,
that's true.
Because Brian is like his lifetime dog, and he's just like he's the point of view of the audience, but he still makes a ton of mistakes himself. So
right,
they're just not as bad. He tries to be the voice of reason. He tries to steer Stewie the right direction, but he still gets stuck on these weird adventures, which are still fun to watch. So. Yeah. What do you think, Jeff?
No, to be perfectly honest, I'm not a huge fan of that show. Although I have watched like every season of its original run on Fox, and I'm more of a Simpsons guy than a Family Guy fan. But yeah, Peter Griffin is hands. In fact, when you told me we were doing this show, he's one of the first people I thought of as one of the worst dads ever. Everything that he's put his family through, and I mean, and it's all for. I mean, it's a TV show. I mean, obviously, if there's no conflict, there's no show, right? And it's all, even the stuff with Meg is played for comedy. I mean, that's all. But if there was a real dad who talked to his daughter that way, or even his wife, or any of the kids.
Oh man.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, those kids would have been taken away long before
Right.
it got to that point in his life. But no, I find him to be one of the most despicable dads I've ever seen. Although I still, one of my favorite episodes of any TV ever was the Bird is the Word episode of Family. So I'll give him the Bird is the Word, but that's about it.
Okay. So I don't have any honorable mentions for the bad list, but I have 4 for the good list, and I'll go back to those right quick. Honorable mentions for good fathers: Batman, father of Damian Wayne, father of Dick Grayson, father of Jason Todd, father, Tim Drake, father of Tim Drake. Now, those were all Robins, but the only one who's truly his son is Damian Wayne, which is the youngest of them. He is his biological son by Talia al Ghul, which is the daughter of his nemesis, Ra's al Ghul. Now, Ra's al Ghul can go on the bad father list.
Yeah, definitely.
But Damian Wayne was introduced to the Batman world in 1987 by Mike W. Barr, a good friend of mine. He was not yet given a name. He was just an infant. He wasn't given a name until much, much later in the Batman All-Star. I think it was Batman All-Star. And talk about the ultimate in baby mama drama. Talia al Ghul literally drops Damian off on Bruce Wayne's doorsteps and says, "This is your son. Now you have to raise him." And I think Damian was between 9 and 11 years old, trained in the way of the League of Assassins. And now Bruce has to stop his 11-year-old son from being a killer, because that's what assassins do. And so he's kind of retrained his kid to not kill, and he's succeeded so far, but Damian can still be a bit pompous and stuck on himself, because he's like, hey, I'm the son of the Batman. I get the mantle next. No one else does. And he proves it on a couple occasions, but he's a bit of a brat, so to speak. So Jeff, what do you think of that one?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of Bruce Wayne too, just from all the Robins, not necessarily the Damian, because I actually didn't like when Damian was old enough to become part of the story. I wasn't as involved in reading the comics, so I'm not super knowledgeable of how well he did that. But I look back at like how he was there for those other kids. Well, maybe he wasn't always there for Jason, but he. It was mostly there, but there was just that one time.
One time, right?
He wasn't, and
that didn't turn out too well.
No, but
they fixed it, but it didn't turn out too well. So,
but it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've always been curious, how things are going with Damian, because like I said, I haven't read a lot of those arcs to see.
He is still he's actually gone around. His older brothers, quote unquote, they didn't really tease him. They just saying, you can't be Batman. You're just a kid, And one issue, he manages to go to each of their hideouts and beat them, using stealth, of course. And now he's currently running the Teen Titans, and he's the youngest Titan on the squad. And he's also best friends with Clark and Lois's son, Jonathan. So they have their own book, Super Sons, and their dynamic is actually fun. Watching those two go out and adventure is like watching a mini Bruce and a mini Clark. Their dynamic is the exact same. You have one who's very vibrant and full of life, and another one who's very brooding, and tactical and everything. But the dynamic works well for them because they're best friends. Little kids make best friends easy, and that's what for Damian, that's what he's been needing. He was generally just raised as a test tube baby, because Bruce knew nothing about him. And This is what he was missing, that childhood, but now he's taking in that childhood with other super friends, as well as learning things about life. So he's coming along. He's way, way better than he was before, because his mother, like I said, ultimate baby mama drama. Wow. When you're the daughter of the demon, whoa, or the son of the demon, whatever you want to call it. On to the other honorable mentions I have on my list for good fathers are Reed Richards, Robert Freeman, otherwise known as Granddad from the Boondocks, and you mentioned him earlier, Jeff, Homer Simpson.
That's funny. When you mentioned Peter Griffin, so I was trying to think of positive fathers from cartoons like that, and Homer's on the fence. Like, Homer has good days and bad. I mean, he has tried to strangle his son multiple occasions. But I'll never forget. My wife and I were discussing this as we led up to this conversation. I'll never forget this episode. It was one of the Christmas episodes, or no, I don't even remember if it was Christmas episode, but it involved them ending up at like one of those Christmas towns, right, where they have like, a little Santa shop and stuff. And Bart gets stuck in the corral with the reindeer who start stampeding, and there's just it's a stupid cartoon, but this moment when they're stampeding, and Homer lifts Bart up and lets them just destroy him. You know what I mean? Just sacrifices his own body for his son to save him. And it's like moments like that happen on The Simpsons more often than you think. There's like these little moments, and he's done so many other stupid things though, and so that's why I'm saying it's a fine line for Homer, because he's really just an idiot. But I'm a huge fan of The Simpsons, a huge fan of that whole series, and how it kind of holds up a mirror to culture and society sometimes. But just sometimes when there's those moments where Homer just kind of redeems himself, and that was one of them. Like he just threw his body in the way of danger for his child, and I was like, if that's not a good father, do you know what I mean? If that's not what a father does, like that was pretty amazing. The other father I would mention from cartoons like that is Bob from Bob's Burgers.
Yes.
He's just this long-suffering dude. I mean, his family just drives him up a wall, but he is a working man. He was running his business. He's trying to teach his kids responsibility and you know what I mean, and help them. And he does a lot of those Homer type moments as well, where he just does the right thing, for his kid. Like, and there's nothing that he wouldn't do for them, even though, but he works really hard to try to provide for them. And I love that show, Bob's Burgers, so much.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because I feel like Bob sometimes.
Darius, what do you have on your shirt? You had an honorable mention?
Yeah, but it's for the bad list, and I know you guys are gonna hate this, but Batman deserves to be number one on that list. He took all them kids and forced them to fight.
I actually had him on the teeter line myself, and I'm like, he kind of did it to take him out of certain situations, but yeah.
No. Batman's the worst father ever. You got a 14-year-old kid out here fighting in the middle of the night, not going to school.
Well, did he force them, or did they kind of he's like, they're going to get out here and do this anyway, I may as well teach him how to be safe?
Well, now in Damien's case, there was no stopping him. That kid was trained as a killer before he even got to Burroughs, so there was just no stop. He was just like, I might as well take him with me and train him not to kill.
But he got killed. Dick Grayson didn't want nothing to do with him. He got Barbara Gordon shot. Act like he was father of the year. That Batman's a horrible dad. I'm sorry. He watch my kids. He couldn't watch my dog or a chia pet. Batman is the worst dad ever. I'm gonna say it now. Listen, if you don't like what I said it. Batman's the worst dad, hands down. I feel that way, and I felt that way for the longest. He is a horrible role model.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well,
I
can't really argue with the theory and the logic and all of it, because like I said, he was kind of on the fence with me. Dick was an orphan. Tim Drake's father was a drunk. He was late for Jason Todd when he most needed him. There were some moments where Bruce definitely slips. You know, I did mention Reed Richards. It's kind of difficult for him to have a all powerful son and a extremely smarter than him and Tony Stark put together daughter, because Valeria is at 8 years old. Well, now she's 14. They aged her up. They aged both the kids up. They're going to fall in family tradition anyway. You know, one kid can pretty much create worlds at his leisure, but he's very much a teenager. And the other one is smarter than her father. Like, and Reed is extremely smart.
Yeah.
And when you have someone who's the smartest one in the room and she's 3 times younger than you are, that's a problem. So those are my, you know, and like I said, Robert Freeman from the Boondocks, you know, he
Bo dog stripper like that.
It was everything I was reading in the book.
Oh, so much more.
Brought to brought to cell life, I should say, animated life. And it was great.
Oh my God. That, if you have not seen it, and you can find
it's probably, yeah, you can find it. If I'm not, HBO Max may have that.
Oh, please.
Because that was an HBO show.
I will buy that today. Take my money. If I can get the archives of that on demand and just watch it whenever I want.
That was a great. I used to race home from work.
I used to have to sneak to watch that show.
Oh man, I would get off like at 11:30, and I didn't have a car then, but I was in walking distance. I would race to the house, HBO midnight, every Friday. And if I missed it by like 10 minutes, I would wait till they showed it again. Yeah. They would show it at midnight, then they would show it at like 2 in.
Yeah, 2 or 3. I watched them both.
Yeah.
I was watching them both because here's what happened. My mom, when by the time it came on, I was about still in high school. Mm-hmm. So I'm dating myself, but don't y'all look at me like I'm young. But we couldn't, because, you know, they would go to sleep. And my house, you know, once my mom go to bed, it's lights out. So between Real Sex and Spawn, I was always sneaking up, trying to watch this show. And you had the TV down ever so slightly because she hadn't fully fallen asleep yet. Now, I used to know my mom's sleep patterns. I know she ain't going to watch this or catch this, so I can say this without any impunity because I know I'm not going to get caught. But I used to fall asleep right around 12:30-ish. So up from 12 to 12:30, it was real low with the subtitles. Once she fell in that deep sleep, I would turn it up, you know, good enough to hear it. But then whatever I missed in the first part, I would catch on the second half, on the back, that second run. It was a system, people. You gotta, if kids don't do this because it's bad, parents do it. But no, I used to love that whole show, the whole premise, the way it was done, the animation. It was gritty and dark at the same time.
Right.
It was ahead of its time. It was beautiful.
Right. Well, we are at our mark. So I'm going to do a little plug here. You can listen to Blurred's Eye View now on blackgamuntentertainment.com. Yes, we are now part of a podcasting family called Black Gamut Entertainment. Listen to after the show. You'll hear some more information about it. If you're looking to be sponsored, we're looking for sponsors. You know, go ahead, drop us a line at Black Gamut Entertainment. Mention Blurred's Eye View. If you're looking for if you're a small business, you're looking for some exposure, hey, drop us a line at the Blurred's Eye View. Check out the website, check out the email, drop us an email line. Mention Blurred's Eye View. That's Black Gamut Entertainment. We are coming up in the world. We're looking for people to get us sponsored so we can get more listeners, so we can get more exposure, so we can get you some more exposure, and we can bring you more entertainment once the world comes back together.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, you know, you can follow Blurred's Eye View on YouTube. We'll be updating our YouTube page pretty soon. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can check me out on LinkedIn as well. Look, we thank you guys for tuning in. We thank you for you guys listening to us rant and talk about and rave about the San Diego Comic-Con at Home. You know, if you want to check it out, check out YouTube and type in Comic-Con at Home 2020. You'll see tons and tons and tons of footage. You won't regret it. They're still doing more stuff for tomorrow. So until then, I'm your host, Chris G.
Darius, and don't put no mustard on your goddamn fish. I'm just find you.
Tartar sauce or hot sauce only. Until then, Blurred's Eye View out. Make sure to listen to Blurred's Eye View with your host Chris G on any of your favorite outlets, including Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to visit our website at blackgamuttentertainment.com and get the latest on news on our podcast, giveaways, and contests. That's Black Gamut Entertainment, GAMUT Entertainment.com. And thank you for listening.